Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Today's video is an update video. It's Saturday, so you get to see what all is going on in the shop and talk about some things and whatnot. So let's get started. This is their promaxx 290 big block head. I actually worked on it like weeks ago, and finally this week got a chance to flow it. What I've done is I did some more valve work to it, and I'm going to do a whole separate video on what all has been done to it. But I've done some stuff to improve it, and it didn't pick up. So if we look at the flow, I mean, it's now going 368 on the long run, and the short runner actually outflows it at 374. What I had a thought for doing, and the reason for even doing this, was because I wanted to see if I couldn't get this head to flow really close to what the 317 head flows. So I still haven't even blended that valve job in or anything else, but I imagine their flow numbers will be very close to the same. If you know, I have milled down the 317, so now they have about the same chamber size as these. They're the same chamber size. Also, these have been cut out to the same intake valve size. So what I'm trying to see if we go back on the dyno with this is, and yeah, this isn't beautiful, and I want you guys to get the wrong idea. This is going on the dyno, I don't care how it looks. I just don't want to know how it performs. But what I want to see on the dyno is, if we have two heads that have the same compression ratio, same valve size, flow about the same amount of air, but this one being smaller, how will that actually affect power? Because you know everybody's about velocity, which it does have an important part, but there are other factors too. So what I'm trying to see, and hopefully we'll get to do that test, is how much of a difference it actually makes. Because it should. The 317s are obviously bigger cross-sectional area, so they should have a slower velocity, but flow the same amount of air as these. That's a different test, but that's one of the things that finally got flowed. I've worked on these weeks ago and just hadn't had a chance to finish them, I guess. And only one of them's done. That's sad. As far as the truck, oh my God. If you have a business, you understand the frustration you'll have where you can't ever touch your own stuff. This thing looks the same as it almost did about a month ago. The only difference is this week, finally, I came out here like at 5 a.m. and just did some wiring. And I redid, I'm gonna show you my stuff. And I know the wires look like crap now because I still have to loom all the stuff and everything else. But I added that relay, and that will now do the trans brake. By the way, what do you think about these door panels? Aren't they kick-ass? Anyway, I added the relay so that the sniper could control the doing the ground relay, so that sniper can do a two-step and also do the trans brake. The downside is, before what I had is a 12 volt that activated the line lock at the same time, or I could do them separately with a switch. So I had a separate switch that would turn off power to the line lock, so one was activated, not the other one. But that meant that the same momentary switch, in other words, the one on my shifter, when I engaged it, I could use it to do either one of the functions if I flipped one of the switches. I can't do that now. So I needed to add another switch, and I just haven't had time. The only wiring thing that's left is there's a 12 volt down here. See the wiring mess, got a lot to clean up, not even close. I have to add a 12 volt switch to control the fans. The main power to that's all ran, everything like that, even the trinary switch, so you could turn on whenever it won't be on the actual temperature sense. That's all wired. Fuel pumps are wired and everything else. These don't look like they're wired because this one won't be on. Instead, what'll happen is this one's for fuel pressure. Whenever I'm doing the carb one, I'll just unplug this one and plug it into here. But I just kept this just to kind of keep dirt out of it. But I haven't made any progress. All week, it took all week just to wrap one header tube. One header tube. I'm hoping this weekend I can just get one header on. Do you know how frustrating that is? But it is what it is. You know, business comes first, you gotta make money. So it's either you have money or you have time. You can't have both. So and that kind of it too. Keith, the guy that works for me, he's been off the last couple of weeks. His full-time job took him away last week. And then this week he had some issues, so he couldn't show up. But he's been doing good at the circle track. He's run in Salina, Oklahoma, he races pure stock. He's won the last 2 races in a row, which is great. And that makes 3 wins for the season. I think he's leading points. He's doing fantastic. But usually the jobs he would be doing, I'm having to do. And it's not his fault, it just is what it is. So if you see all these heads, because all these have been valve job this week. And you might say, why are you messing with valve job? You should be porting. Well, what I'll do is usually I'm in the porting room until my earbuds die. Then I'll come out here and I'll do a valve job. And part of it is there are things on here that need to be done, so I can take when I get done porting, that head could go on here. So it's been a mess. But just to give you an idea how many I've done. These Brodix IK heads, 180s, I've done valve job 2 sets of those. I finished these Stellite seats, which, God, that took forever. That was a time eater. But because I had the tooling set up for those, I went ahead and valve jobbed a set of Race Right 270s that aren't even aligned for a while. And then, of course, the promaxxes are there. As far as the port stuff, these are the 13-degree heads. They are so close to being done. I'm probably going to finish these this weekend and then flow them. Probably today, actually. They're really close. But the only downside is and I made my mistake. You probably can't see it, and I'll move my light, but I blistered just this one side, and you can't see it. A lot of people would just send this out. I'm not doing that. But you probably can't even notice it. But there's a blister there, which means it's thin right there at the push rod slot. And there's one on each head. It's this port on each head. And I don't know if it's whenever they CNC did them that they shifted over this side more. I don't know. But I got it. So that's got to be welded up and fixed. And not a big deal. But after that, I can mess with the intake manifold, which is another, oh, thank God. Anyway, that's that. But I want to show you one other weird thing that happened. By the way, this is what CNC chambers look like instead of Dragon Slayers. I did finish porting a set of Dragon Slayers this week, but it wasn't probably one of the guys that was watching this video. It's not yours, unfortunately. I'm gonna start on that this week. But I want to show you this. This is new and came in. Yeah. See all the crap that comes in one day? This. So you're like, you already showed these heads. These are the same as the Assault Racing heads. These are the same as the AFR Enforcer heads, whatnot. What this customer did is he sent this head in to me. He said, I want you to do a valve job on it and make sure everything's fine, blend that stuff, flow it, and go from there. I was like, okay. He got it from Amazon, so I'm not sure what they call them, but here's what's different. If you're looking at the seat material, you'll notice that looks dramatically different because it is different. This is copper material that the other seats were not made of. So like the AFR Enforcers and even the Assaults are made of this ductile iron, but it's really soft material, easy to machine. These are harder and harder to machine, but my Robins will do fine with it. However, if you notice, the valve job itself has more angles. So this may in fact flow more, but if you notice all these boogers underneath it, that's because like in the AFR Enforcers and others, what they'll do is they did a bull hog and cut all that out so people couldn't see that. This is like they skipped that, just did a 5-angle valve job and left it. I'm gonna try, if I have time, which I probably don't have time because I don't have any time. I might flow on this before, and obviously I'll flow it after because of the customer and see what it does. You can see a small redge there, but nothing like what was before. So this is new. I don't know if they changed it recently, but I've never seen any of these heads with that seat material, period. And I never see the valve job in it like this either. So that's new to me. And your last thing is this. So I'm gonna show this head while I'm talking about this. This is my favorite season of the year. I know you're like, oh, July 4th season, totally into blowing up stuff. No, it's my favorite season of the year. It's dun-dun, it's Supreme Court season. If you don't care about any of this stuff and you only want to listen to car stuff, you probably could stop the video, and I totally understand. Tomorrow's video, what I'm gonna do is all the other big block Chevy tests that were done on the dyno that day, I'm gonna talk about those. So for instance, like the Race Right 270s versus the 294s and different intake manifolds on different heads and how they compared. That's it, that's tomorrow's video. So if you're done with the car stuff, that's it. But this one is exciting to me, maybe not exciting to others, so I totally understand, but I'm just gonna ramble here, I guess. So Supreme Court season, usually about this time of year, the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, not state Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court hands down rulings that they've done on certain cases. And this week they had 3 major ones. So I'm gonna try to go through some of them with you because it is amazing. You've probably heard of one, the affirmative action one, because that was the first one that hit hard. So if you're not familiar with it, because the name itself is confusing. And I have some background in this. My sister is an attorney, and we both took some classes when we were in high school to learn more of this stuff. But let me give you the idea what affirmative action is. And I'm being really general. I think this happened around the civil rights era, 50s or 60s. They had passed a law, and this law was called affirmative action. But essentially what it does is this. If you had 2 candidates apply for a job or asked to get into a college, and they had the same qualifications, so exactly the same, by that law, you had to pick the minority. So even though the 2 candidates were equally qualified, you would have to pick the minority. The idea with the law was to bring up races that were underserved or underprivileged and to bring them up to a higher standard. That was the idea for the law. Now, you could argue a whole bunch of different things with it, and a lot of people have, that that's no different racism than anything else. But I'm not even going to get into that. But that was the law. And this also led to things like quotas, where certain businesses would have to have a certain amount of minorities that work for them and so on and so forth. Well, what happened was, we take it to this point, in order for you to get a case in front of the Supreme Court, you had to sue, and then that case usually you sue locally, then it goes up to the state level, and then the state Supreme Court rules, and then you go up to, and then you ask for the federal Supreme Court, can you hear this case? And sometimes they reject them, just don't hear them, and never goes any further. And then in this case, it did. And this one was interesting. And the reason why it was interesting is because if you listen to it, you would think the majority population sued to end affirmative action, and you'd be incorrect. The suit was actually brought by a minority, Asian community, and it takes place in Harvard and North Carolina universities. The suit basically goes like this. The Asian community claimed that they were not getting access to Harvard, to getting accepted into Harvard, and they were taking other minority groups, such as Hispanics and African Americans, over them, even though they were less qualified than what they were. And they argued that it wasn't fair. So a minority versus a minority, essentially. And that got brought up to the Supreme Court, and then this week they ruled that is totally, that it's illegal to do that anymore. So it's essentially they choked out affirmative action, which are like, I don't care, that just applies to college stuff and that doesn't affect me at all. And I totally would get it, except for usually Supreme Court rulings have impacts on other parts of society. So for instance, you could now say, well, wait a minute, what about all those scholarships for college? Because a lot of them were based on, you had two candidates again, and this one's a minority, you have to choose that one. So that was maybe affect that. Or you could even go further. What about hiring? So now you wouldn't even have to. So there could be negative and positive consequences, I guess, to this. So I have no opinion on it, just sharing my idea with the whole thing with it. That was huge. The other two ones, one I totally agree with. The second one was a web designer who hypothetically sued, but didn't refuse service to a gay couple for their web design, claiming that they went against their morals. Which, as a business owner myself, I should be able to refuse service to anybody, whoever I choose. And I know you're like, well, that could be seen as kind of racist if you just got rid of, you didn't do one section of population or whatnot. Totally would understand that, except for this. That might have applied in the 60s, but now with online stuff, your marketplace is so much larger that you can essentially shop forever. So it's not the same as where you only had the businesses within your town or within your traveling distance to get to. That part's gone, so it doesn't make sense for that. So I think a business should be able to refuse whoever you want. You don't, and then the consumer can say, I don't like your business, so I'm not going to visit your business because of that. But anyway, the business owner won. So they are allowed to refuse on moral standing, which there was a similar case about a marriage cake a few years ago, same thing. And the last one, which was the big one, was the student loan forgiveness. And this one brings up a lot of people get really heated over this deal. I have a college degree, and I went into debt for it. And I want a lot of people that watch this video, I want you to all understand this. Because for those that didn't go to college, I don't shame you in any way. You do what you do. And I don't think college gives you one leg up on anything else, I promise you. Because I know more people make more money than me and do not have a college degree. So it is, to me, that part's nothing. But you may not know this one important aspect, and it's huge. On a student loan, if you get a student loan, it's the only loan you can never get out of, period. The only way to get out of a student loan is to pay it off or die, period. You're like, nuh-uh. This may be totally new to many of you. Let's say you get a house, you get credit cards, whatever else. You could file bankruptcy and that will remove that debt from you. You could file bankruptcy and have student loans and you will still have a student loan. Bankruptcy does not dissolve student loans. They are forever. Forever. So, yes, I didn't want the government to pay for everybody else's student loans. I didn't. But I also think it's retarded to me, and I use that word because it sounds that way, that you can get someone at 18. And for instance, when I went to college, I had been 18 for 9 days. And you can pretty much say to them, here, I'm going to give you a $100,000 loan that you can never get out of. You would never give, say, an 18-year-old a $100,000 credit card limit. You just wouldn't do it. And then say you can never get out of it. To me, it's absurd. But in order to pay for college, you pretty much have to get loans. You have rich people. So unfortunately, even my son, even with us going to try to help him, he's going to have to get a loan. But the other thing with that is too, that makes me even more upset. It was student loan rates used to be phenomenally low, like 2 or 3%. Now they're like 7, 8, 9%, which to me is ridiculous. The loan rate should be like 1 or 2%. You want to know why? Because you can never get out of it. So if I'm a bank and I'm loaning to a student, I know I'm going to get my money back because either they're going to pay it or they're going to die. And then I'm going to get their assets from that because I've got a loan against your estate. So it's ridiculous. But anyway, the Supreme Court knocked down Joe Biden's thing saying they're going to pay for student loans, which I'm all for too, except for I also see a negative too, because I like to see both sides of things. I don't think the government should pay for your student loans. I don't, except for this. This one's huge. I think the government should pay for any student, don't care, minority, whatever race you want. If you go to college and you become a doctor, the government should pay for your entire college as long as you maintain a certain GPA. That's what I think. You know why? Because we need doctors. If you ever gone to try to go to a cardiologist, you got a 6-month wait, you realize we need more doctors. But I don't need a philosophy degree. Those should be like, that's on you, buddy. That's the only one I think the government should pay for. The rest, no. No. That's just you. You just got to live with the consequences. However, the other side of this is too. So what do you have, like million of kids or something now that now have to pay more on the loans that they were gathering interest the whole time? Well, as a business, that means they have less money to spend on, say, my business. So yeah, but then you're like, well, you're going to have to pay more in taxes. I don't have to. It's not like they're going to be like, well, we're not paying student loans, so we're going to reduce your taxes. No, they're still going to charge us more for taxes, and they're still going to spend something else that I didn't want anyway. So no, I didn't want them to pay for it, but I also see the negatives for as a business where the people won't have money to spend and it could go either way. Also, I do think it's unfair for us to, especially people that don't have college education, to pay for other people that have college educations. But anyway, Supreme Court season. I think that's the last major ruling. There might be others I'm just not aware of, but that was 3 huge ones this week. Anyway, I won't do this again until next June, because then it's dun-dun, Supreme Court season again. Last year's season was whew. The season finale, was big, because if you remember, last year's season finale was the abortion one. So yeah, last year's season finale. This season finale is pretty good too. But anyway, you guys take care. I promise I won't do any more of this till next year. You guys take care.